When my cousin and I were 18 and 16, we'd often go to the beach at night to smoke weed. We lived in a beach town and would visit different public beaches to keep it random since weed wasn't decriminalized yet, around 2008. The entrance to this particular beach was down a steep road. Once you came down the hill, the road flattened into a long, single-row parking lot overlooking the water. We were always on the lookout for cops driving down, and once they were on the hill, you could easily identify a cop car and make a plan to leave. There were also random cars that would come and go, doing the same thing we were, but no one ever bothered each other. One night, I picked up my cousin, and we drove down to the beach, parking right next to the sand and starting our usual activities. Occasionally, a car would come down the hill and park or leave, but for the most part, we were alone. Then, a minivan came down the hill and pulled into the lot. They didn't park but sat for a few minutes with their headlights pointed straight at the driver's side of my car. My cousin and I were getting annoyed because the lights were blinding us, and we debated leaving. Then, the car drove to the end of the lot, past us, and turned around, this time pointing their lights directly at the passenger side of the car. Now we were getting paranoid, thinking maybe they were looking for someone, maybe a parent looking for their teen partying at the beach. We just sat and waited for them to leave. With relief, they finally started to drive and seemed like they were leaving. As they passed the back of my car, the minivan stopped directly perpendicular to my car, blocking me in completely. We kept trying to look in our mirrors to see who was in the car and what they were doing, giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they were just confused. This quickly changed when we heard one of the doors open. I turned to my cousin and said, "We need to get out of here." I quickly turned on my car, an old sedan, and gunned it forward onto the sand, which was my only option. Somehow, my car had traction, and I managed to turn around on the beach and back onto the paved parking lot towards the entrance. The minivan immediately followed us as I sped up the hill out of the beach. They matched my speed down the street while my cousin and I screamed in terror. Fortunately, I grew up in the surrounding neighborhood and managed to lose them after some quick turns and prayers. We never saw the van again and stayed away from the beach for a while. Looking back, it seems like it could have easily been people trying to traffic us or who knows what, but definitely nothing good. A few years back in 2020, my friend and I ventured into a remote part of the forest by his house in Colorado. Specifically, it was the Black Forest. To give you a visual, my friend's house was at the edge of the forest. If you went deeper, you'd come across a little abandoned house, and beyond that, a small sand canyon. It wasn't just the two of us. His sister, his dogs, and his sister's friend were with us. As we headed into the forest, I kept hearing a sound I couldn't quite describe. It was like stepping on a twig, but really, really quiet. When we reached the sand canyon, we overlooked a creek. Normally, we'd walk down, but that day we decided to slide down. I went first. After I landed on the grass, my friend's sister asked, "Hey, do you guys hear that?" "Hear what?" my friend replied. "That clicking." We all said no and chalked it up to her dog maybe stepping on something. After that, my friend and his sister's friend slid down. Now it was just my friend's sister. As she was sitting down, it got quiet enough for all of us to hear four human-sounding clicks. The dogs broke the silence, barking at something in the tree line. In one motion, my friend, his sister, and I ran up the hill that bordered the sand canyon and booked it straight to the house. I didn't hear anyone really running after us, which makes me wonder if the next part can be chalked up to those clicks. When we got back to his house, we sat at the table and talked about what happened. Everyone else chalked it up to various things, but I knew what I heard. After dinner, we decided to sleep on his trampoline, which was right next to the forest. This part comes from my friend, who told me what happened when I went inside to use the restroom. As they were about to connect to the speaker, my friend's sister was playing with a flashlight, turning it on and off constantly. She felt like she kept hearing the clicks a little off sync. She stopped for a second, click, click, click. My friends didn't waste any time. They jumped up from the trampoline and ran back inside. I was about to put on my shoes when they all ran inside. They told me about the human-like clicks they heard. We decided not to sleep outside and instead stayed inside. The story doesn't end there, unfortunately. Later that night, after I was done using the restroom, I fell into a half-asleep state. Then I heard it one more time, click, click, click. I thought my friend did it as a joke and didn't think about it until the next morning when I asked them if they had done that last night. They were all confused and told me they were dead asleep. I then remembered we hadn't shut the window that night. My friend and I kind of grew apart after 2021. I've only been back to his house and that forest once, and I never heard the clicks again. I was 8 and my sister was 5. We decided to walk home from school instead of waiting for our parents. They were late. It was a pretty rural area back then. We were enjoying the sun and feeling grown up when a silver sedan slowed down next to us. A man with a mostly bald head, black gloves, and a big smile leaned over and swung the passenger door open. We had to step around it. He said our mom was sick and he was sent to pick us up. I started getting a bad feeling because I had never seen this man before. He said it was okay and asked if we liked candy, gesturing to a small pile of Halloween candy on his burgundy seat. His eyes were on my sister. He only glanced at me. I took my sister's hand and tugged her along while saying no, like my dad taught me. He started backing up, keeping us in his open door. He told us to get in the car over and over. The smile was gone, and I will never forget the way his gloved hands squeezed the steering wheel. He shouted at us to get in the F at #ING car. I was starting to cry and was beyond scared. That's when he tried to grab my sister. I yelled at her to run, and we did. The maniac actually kept backing his car up. There were only fields and abandoned lots. I heard him slam on the brakes. I knew we had to hide. I pulled my sister over this old wooden driveway-like thing built over a ditch and into one of the abandoned lots. It was severely overgrown. I pulled my sister down onto the ground in some really tall grass. She was crying. I put my finger to my lips, and she got quiet. We stayed hidden on our stomachs while I heard the sounds of a car door closing, footsteps walking through the gravel on the side of the road, swearing, more footsteps, a passing car, a car door closing, and an engine starting. A car drove through the gravel. We stayed put. I felt frozen. I was so scared. After a few more cars whizzed by, I slowly raised my head. He was gone. We ran home, our hands glued together. We made it home. That was one of the most terrifying days of my life. Oh, and my mom wasn't sick. Hello, my name is Steven, and this story takes place when I was 14 years old. Where I live, there's a nature preserve just up the road. It has a park, soccer fields, and more, perfect for hanging out with friends. This happened in April, so it was just starting to get warmer. My friend and I had spring tryouts for our school soccer team coming up, so we go to the fields at the nature preserve every day after school. One particular day, we went to the park around 5:30 p.m. and left around 8:30 p.m., so it was quite dark out. The road that leads to the nature preserve becomes very eerie and dark because there are no lights past my neighborhood. It's about a 15-minute walk from my neighborhood, so we were in pitch darkness for a good bit. I was on my skateboard, and my friend was on his bike. Obviously, a skateboard and a bike have a speed difference, so we decided to walk our vehicles to stick together until we were back in a lighted area. I love to document everything I found interesting, so every day when we walked home in the dark, I would record in case I caught something interesting or unexplainable, which I definitely did this time. We were about halfway there, joking and trying to scare each other by saying things like, "Imagine if Pennywise just comes out of nowhere." Looking back, we probably jinxed ourselves. The road is surrounded by woods, and there's lots of wildlife in our area. Suddenly, we heard footsteps right next to us in the woods. We immediately stopped talking and became very alert, ready to run if something popped out. Then, the scariest thing happened. We heard a voice say my friend's name, followed by a growling noise. This tall, creepy thing just popped out of the woods, and my friend took off on his bike, leaving me behind. I threw my skateboard at it and ran as fast as I could. Keep in mind, all of this is on video, so I have proof if anyone wants to see. The adrenaline was unreal. Once we got home, my friend's dad grabbed his Glock, and we went back to retrieve my skateboard. That's about the end of the story. If y'all want to see the video, let me know. I also have another story that takes place at the nature preserve, so let me know if you want to hear it.